Welcome to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay, where we discuss growth strategies both for business and a personal perspective, discussing all kinds of businesses, growth strategies, technology, investment strategy, and much more. We are meeting with entrepreneurs, investors, app developers, and property developers. Our vision is to help 10,000 business owners grow their businesses. Introducing our host, Matt Lindsay. Matt is a former banker and corporate financier. He now spends his time building his own companies organically and through acquisition, as well as raising capital for other businesses. Matt works with a wide variety of entrepreneurs and investors.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Growth Show. Today's guest is Craig Boddington. Welcome, Craig. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Matt. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So I gather from your LinkedIn profile and other things that you're in sunnier climes than we used to hang out in.
That's true. Yeah, we met one another, didn't we, back in the UK, in London, and so I've it's been quite a travel, quite a journey for me since then. I've been retired, moved to Switzerland, lived around the world a little bit, and I find myself now in Central Florida.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So you haven't picked up the twang of the accent just yet, but I'm sure that'll come with time.
That's true. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs and through my day, and I probably would chat a little bit more, I suppose, about what I'm up to. But I have this joke in it that I'm always playing, and it feels a bit tired now because I'm always using it like old grandfather or dad jokes, sort of thing. I'm often telling the Americans here that I'm from deep South Alabama, and they kind of try. And I love living here, so but they sort of look at me a bit strangely, and then they say, yes, but I've worked really hard to lose the accent and gain the Queen's English, over the. They kind of believe in me, but then, as in life, it's not a good idea to start off a relationship with a lie like that. So I quickly unravel that, and step back from that one. But yeah, so I haven't gained the sort of twang, as you say, but certainly it does help. I think often it's James Bond sort of accent they kind of like over here. It's quite funny, really, when you meet up with people like that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So by way of background, what I normally like to do is give a bit of an introduction in terms of how we met. And I think that it was, I don't know who introduced us, but we met, it must have been kind of 2006, 2007, around that kind of time,
around that time, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then we had a interlude with a flamingo. We won't go into that in too much detail, but
lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the people involved in that learn more lessons than others, but anyway, that's a whole different story. But yeah, there's and obviously I think at one point we had a limited company together where we were looking to do some acquisitions, which at that point didn't transpire. And I know, from historically that you were on, was it the first Harbour Club with Jeremy Harbour?
Second, actually.
Right.
Yeah,
okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been on the first one, but it's like a lot of these things. I procrastinated. For me, it was a really high ticket at the time for me to pay out, and I just kicked the can down the road and beat myself up for a couple of months, and said, no, put my big boy pants on and jump in and do it. I suppose that I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, no, awesome. And we had Jeremy on as a guest, and I think it's that had the highest views. So hopefully you can continue that.
That's a big act to follow, Jeremy. Yeah, he's.
But yeah, so obviously we met. I think it's when I was in banking. I was working for HBOS and around that kind of time. And then obviously, yeah, you were beginning that kind of journey of acquiring the first companies. And I remember you kind of had was it a marketing company and maybe a print company, something like that? Was that right?
Yeah, I had a whole range of companies, all across the board. A bit of a shotgun approach, we took at the time. Sure. If there was a demand, a need, if it quacked, it looked like a business that we could acquire, we would jump in and acquire it. There's some flaws in that, that strategy, because it wasn't really focused, and you do really need that. Otherwise, you become, amass a whole load of businesses, and there's no real synergies between them. It's baker, candlestick maker, etc., all pulled together, and you can't really make them work that well. So, having a focus strategically on specific sectors, albeit campaigns, does make sense. Yeah.
Okay, and just in terms of your kind of background and bit of your history. So where did you grow up, and what's your kind of early career? If we can get that bit of context as well.
Absolutely. So early career, I was with a construction business, a family construction business. I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur, so we'd had running businesses in our blood, if you will. Fortunately, my father was very ill at the time, and we had to I took over the business. I think, I'd like to think it wasn't purely down to me, but a few years later, we had to close the business down, mainly because it was partly a recession, but I'd like to think it wasn't my incompetence running the business. But again, massive lessons learned, in terms of liquidating the company and starting again. So I then went on, spent a little bit of time in the regular army and came out, so a bit of time in the forces, and then came back out and picked back up in business, and started to do some IT training and IT project management. And that's my journey started then into more change and transformation management, running major change programs globally for some very, very large corporates. And then over the years, I think we mentioned Jeremy, the Harbour Club. I came to what I think might have been a midlife crisis. I got to this point where I thought I was really frustrated by going back into these organizations and constantly redoing what other people have done, or it's like painting the Forth Road Bridge. Sure. Whilst I was working with great people, but not really. I felt I wasn't really working with entrepreneurs. Hence, sure. That was my background. So I was looking around as one does. Saw Jeremy at some event. It was a bit of one of those pitch fests, people just presenting and trying to sell things. What was really interesting about Jeremy, he didn't pitch anything. He just told his story. Right. And it was all about how he managed to, his approach to M&A, his journey of buying companies, and it resonated with me. Having done an MBA myself, I thought that, wow, that nothing what he told me there was included in any of our M&A electives, if you will. And so I thought, but it seemed to work well. And I thought, well, if I take my transformational skills and professional skills and took this construct of the approach for M&A through how the Harbour Club does it, and then Jeremy, this is great. Very early days, it was a different construct, of course, there, where it was a group of 6 of us on each course, and we actually bought the first company, and that we'd share that. In fact, that was my first deal. In fact, I managed to get the deal closed. In fact, to be fair, Jeremy closed it for me. Right. Whilst we're in a meeting, I was going, what's happening? And literally managed to acquire this HVAC company through this plumbing merchant's parent company. Right. And the guy was simply saying, look, we chatted for about an hour, if you will, about his problems. It seemed to me like all he wanted was a mentor. And then he happened to mention, and I've got this HVAC company down the road I've owned for several years. It's bleeding me dry, about 17,000 a month. I have to keep paying to support it. And Jeremy immediately picks up on that and said, I think maybe we can have a chat. If we took that off your hands, you'd be 17 grand better off, wouldn't you? Yeah. I went, oh, you're right. And so we went off for lunch, went to talk to another company. That deal didn't go through. But came back, literally sat down with him, drafted up the sale and purchase agreement, and acquired the business there and then from the guy. Wow. For £1. Walked out. It was a bit like, I reminisce about it sometimes. I think it's a bit like, if you've ever been to McDonald's and you walk away, you've ordered your Big Mac, large fries, and a Coke, and you walk and you open the bag and they've got an extra Big Mac in there. You think, he's made a mistake. He's going to call me back in a minute. It was just like, no, he didn't. He just followed us to the company and introduced us as the new owners of the company.
So you got your money's worth out of Jeremy, because I know that those original Harbour Clubs didn't involve a private jet journey down to his.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was all very experiential. Private jet to an island in the Med and all this sort of thing. It was a great experience. I laugh also about that. If you've ever been in one of these small little jets and you get a bit of turbulence and you happen to at the wrong time decided to go to the toilet, and you've got this little bulkhead pushing your head down. It's not pretty. It's a bit messy, to be honest with you. So it's not all quite as luxury as it may seem at this size, you know. But I think Jeremy now has gone on to success, a lot of success, and I think he's got his own jet now, so he certainly doesn't have to worry about you know, traveling in you know, normal commercial flights.
Yeah, no, I think there's a jet and a couple of boats as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's got his toys. He's got his toys.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and I think he lives in Dubai at the moment, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think and unfortunately his wife we're current, you know, on topic at the moment. She's from Kiev,
right?
So from the Ukraine. So they're a little bit worried. So I think they're trying to get the family out at the moment. But he's got a place in, I believe, in Kiev and also in Dubai and Singapore. Yeah.
No, interesting. Yeah, so you kind of cut the apron strings, so to speak, and then went out on yourself and began to do these agglomerations.
Yeah, that's right.
Was that the model? Yeah.
Yeah, well, partly, yes. I mean, over the years, you know, we've you know, I after doing this one deal, I then dropped straight into this, and actually, you know, effectively was working very closely with Jeremy, ran the Harbour Club with him for several years,
right,
and then you know, got a lot of exposure to M&A, because all the deals came through Jeremy and I, that all the Harbour Clubbers were doing. So really got a massive exposure to transacting deals. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned. It's, you can read about this M&A, you can learn if you've done your degrees and MBAs, etc. But it's about execution at the end of the day. And figuring out, you know, the right route, where the sand traps are, you know, etc., and being able to navigate around these things, but doing it in, you know, in the right way, you know, setting yourself up at, you know, a very ethical, congruent, ecological way. Certainly that's the way. And there's a number of people out there, we know, teaching like Jeremy does in sort of these M&A, entrepreneurial M&A, if you will, and you know, different approaches, put it that way, to this.
Yeah. Okay. And so that first acquisition, how did that lead to? Because I know you had a fairly substantial exit. What was that journey like? So you know, company number one to building that kind of portfolio that you exited with. What were the kind of the things learned on that journey, and also at the same time, what was the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened for me, my journey was that I thought this works, this stuff works. So I was doing interim work before being parachuted into these large corporates and transforming them. I quickly closed those down, kind of went cold turkey on it, and went straight into the M&A. And as I said, it was a journey where we were learning, and so it was a very steep learning curve for me. But it took it was a case of feast and famine at times. You know, you would get businesses in, and then what often would happen, we would, you know, at the time, a lot of the transactions were distressed acquisitions. It was during the recession.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, but essentially now I think we've got another sort of tsunami of deal, bigger than it was before. I know before we started the call, we were just chatting a little bit about that, and perhaps we'll pick up on it in a bit. Yeah. But my kind of journey was that I, you know, went cold turkey, went into doing this, and then acquired a lot of small to medium businesses across a number of different entities. The lessons I kind of learned there was, as we mentioned earlier, try not to do this shotgun approach. You know, have somewhat of a thesis that you're going to work, a strategy, or build a campaign. You may say, look, I want to, you know, start off with, you know, looking at companies perhaps where I have some experience in, or I've got, you know, where I can show credibility, or where I've got passion for. Because when you speak to entrepreneurs, you know, you want to be able to demonstrate this level of empathy and understanding. You've walked that same journey in their shoes, if you will, for that time, understood what's going through their minds, etc. And they're invariably, obviously, interested in the end number they want to get to. But for them, more often than not, it's also important to know you're a safe pair of hands for their legacy. And to be able to demonstrate that. And in doing so, what we often found was that when I was just doing a shotgun approach, you know, we wouldn't really get into the, you know, be able to understand that level of industry knowledge you might need, or the challenges and issues they were facing. But if you actually focus on having a conversation with, where you're going, I'm going to focus on, say, construction. We mentioned HVAC. I'm going to look at HVAC companies. And then you start having a conversation perhaps with 10 companies. On the 10th company, you find this one company, it's the ideal avatar for what you're looking for. It's the size, there's the motivations, it's got the right, all the right sort of measures in there and elements in there you're looking for. There's a good management team in place, etc. So the owner leaves, it's not an issue around succession and so on. And then you turn around and you think, hold on a minute, company number 4 I spoke to had, at the time, perhaps I didn't know what to do with it, whether there was a deal there to be done. But now, knowing what company number 10 needs in terms of maybe it needs a product or a market, or maybe needs some leadership in the business because the owner was very much involved, is exiting. Company number 4 has those, perhaps, as in the situation, in this example. And so you're able to then go back to company number 4, strike a deal with them, and turn around and then come back to company number 10 and then say, yeah, I'm bringing with me this solution, this revenue, this market, this product, whatever it may be, solving the problem from the business point of view. But also there's somewhat of solving the problem for the entrepreneur as well, in terms of what their needs are, showing, yes, we've got a good solid team here that's going to look after my legacy as well. Yeah. So we learned lessons like that, and so there was a lot of lessons that we sort of learned over the years, and so as a result, that body of knowledge that you amass over the years really now enables us to really be very, very efficient and effective, knowing now I'm not going to make that mistake again, and figuring out different strategies. There were times where we'd acquired companies and then so focused on doing the deals, placed our general manager or general managers into the businesses to operate them. And then these plates were spinning. I was busy doing deals, and then forgetting some plate, or didn't notice some plates had broken, or the GM had gone native. We've had that in the past. Solid guy that we thought was in there. Suddenly, when I say gone native, we had the business owners still in the company. They started to collude together, and ended up. We ended up saying, look, just have the business. We're walking away because it became such a problem child, and it wasn't worth the juice, wasn't worth the squeeze, even to litigate with them. Lessons learned over things like that. We now have strategies that say, okay, and these are obvious things now. I think back, we'd have strategies to deal with these sort of things where we don't have to just simply say, have the business back. We can actually facilitate, a smoother exit and to recover, capital that we've invested into the companies as well. But there's just an example of these lessons that you learn over the years. And I think that's the reality of this entrepreneurial M&A that one does here. It's about, doing one deal, you learn about the challenges and the issues on that one deal. Do 10 deals, you've now started to amass a knowledge, because it's where you might have a particular strategy that you've read or you maybe fallen into and understood. What often happens, people tend to focus just on that one strategy and try to get every opportunity jammed into that square peg in a triangle hole, trying to force it to happen. That's not how really it works. You need typically, we learned over the years to make sure that when you talk to a business owner, you're actually going in with very open eyes, open ears, open heart to figure out what their problems are, both in the business, but also emotionally speaking, because people want to get to an end number when they're trying to sell their company. But why are they looking to sell? Why do they need to sell? Why does it need to be that number? What's the motivation behind it? And when you get to build that empathy and understanding with an owner, you get to understand those real needs. What's the nightmare stories that are going through their mind? What's keeping them awake at night? How's it affecting their behavior? You get to hear about their story, and that's really, really important, because we're then able to put together the deal structures, daisy chain them together to solve the problem. Not coming in with saying, I'm just going to do a property carve out type solution, or I'm just going to do an LBO. That's it, and then putting together a terms and conditions that might say, you're going to have to stay in here for 3 years in the business, but they may have a sick child that they need to look after. Maybe they've got a family they want to go and spend time with. You need to understand the real underlying motivations.
Okay, and in terms of the obviously in lots of different aspects, people pitch these things of you can buy businesses or buy real estate for no money down. You've done it, right? And this isn't
yeah,
this is real.
The reality is that there's these like no money down deals that you hear. Absolutely, you can do them, but it's a relatively subset of the overall landscape of deals that one can do.
Yeah,
and that's what they're talking about when you're talking to business owners. You get to realize no, this isn't really a no money down type deal. These guys have got a great business. But if you understand the motivations really well, and you build massive amount of empathy, and you focus on what we call a deal pie, and Jeremy might have mentioned this is something that the Harbour Club really focuses at the core of its strategies. It's about a deal pie where if we understand the needs, in other words, if they're really worried about the personal guarantees they have, you say, well, look, we can resolve those, and they say, well, actually, we also want to. We have this debt hanging over our shoulders, or whatever it may be, that family debt. We want to pay. Want to pay off. Okay, well, we can figure that out. We'll solve that problem for you. If we do that, that solution you bring to the table in a situation where they were just completely lost, they didn't know what to do. The motivations where there may be a baby boomer looking to retire, they've got no succession planning in place, and they want to leave, they want to move on and go and retire. They perhaps retired once, COVID came along and had to come back in the business, and then they feel like they're going to die with their boots on. And their wife or the spouse is saying to them, when are we going to spend time? When are we going to retire? I've retired. She may have been drafted into the business over the years. And the founders, the owners saying, well, I really want to give back to my wife, but I can't. I'm stuck in the business. If you can solve that problem, how much is that worth to them? It could be worth a significant portion of that deal pie, if you will. And if you do that, and if you build up the empathy and the understanding really well, it can amount to as much as 100% of the transaction. Sometimes, a lot of the times it doesn't, because naturally you do need to have access to capital, as an example, or it's going to be, you're going to be doing a lot of searching and sourcing to find that highly distressed deal. And that's absolute distressed deals where their balance sheet is, full of holes. It's very difficult to, pay what the owner may conceive and believe the business is worth, or what they need it to be worth. The market, look at the balance sheet, could be contingently insolvent. And only a fool would go, here you go, here's a couple of $1 million or pounds for that business. When it's what you're doing is buying probably several $1 million worth of debt, or insolvent debt. So in that situation, you're going to have to do a lot of turnaround transformation to fill the black hole up in the balance sheet before you actually get to a positive position. Whereas a going concern, you're going in with a business. If you structure the deal pie and the empathy side, and you perhaps do a bit of leverage in the deal to just get to the number they're looking for, you've got an immediate cash flow coming in from the business. Whereas with a distressed acquisition, absolutely, if you've got no money, no access to capital right away, probably distressed deals are a good idea. But it's not just distressed deals that you can, acquire for $1 to just solving a problem for them. Perhaps using a lot of, insolvency law, financial restructuring, etc., to get them over. And it's alchemy when you do something like that. So it can be great. But I actually fell out of love. Actually, one of the lessons I learned here, I fell out of love doing distressed deals for a while, because we're doing all this work. And there wasn't really, at the end of the day, after we removed debt and then tidied things up, there wasn't really much left. There wasn't really much in the way of revenue and size, scale within the business. So a lot of work, but not a great level of return. But cathartically, it does you good, because you're helping people, if you're in that mindset. So you're really helping people get in from a very dark place and solving their problems. That really does, that's what we do like. And often you're doing it in partnership with them, because they may want to stay on. You're not simply buying a company, take advantage of an individual's situation, but far from it. You're actually solving a problem for them. If they want to move on and just, hey, I've had enough, I want to move on, fair enough. Often they want to come with you, want some help to get beyond this and solve the problem. But I found, that some of the deals we're doing, frankly, were too small.
Right.
So when we do a distress deal, the reality is, and a lot of maybe some of the advice I might give today on this call with you, I think back and these people might say, well, that's obvious, but it's not obvious when you're deep in the weeds doing this, and you're somewhat blinkered, but you step back a little bit and start to look at this, perhaps, talk to people or listen to these sort of programs, you'll get a sense of, there's different ways of looking at it. And the thing to do with that in a distress deal, make sure the materiality level, the size of the business is a lot bigger. Size matters in M&A generally, and in business generally. So instead of looking at a business that might be doing sub $1 million, in revenue, go for one that's was doing 20, 30 million in revenue, knowing that actually, and it may have a 100 million of debt in there, knowing that you can deal with that debt and sort of through court-approved schemes, etc., and solvency or just restructuring, you can remove a lot of that debt and create overnight is alchemy, as I mentioned, where you can take a business, and I've done this many times, where we might have a business that might be losing say 500,000 on its balance sheet, and we remove that debt from the business, restructure a few things on the balance sheet, and we able overnight then to, even if the revenue drops a little bit, convert that business from doing a 500,000 loss to 500,000 profit.
Right.
Now that's a million in delta. You're going to have to do a lot of work to in a small to medium enterprise to actually increase its profit from by £1 million or $1 million. So that's why I like. Now I figured that out. We do a lot of there's distress deals like that. Other ones where there's no money down type of transaction. And I should point out, I know we were talking about the Harbour Club, but I want to disabuse everybody of the fact that people think of these sort of things like these trainings are all about no money down type deals. Absolutely not. It's just one strategy in amongst 15, 16 different strategies that one might deploy. As I said, you figure out the problem and daisy chain the right ones together. It happens to need a bit of distress in it. We can use that strategy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to pay market price after that. Once you fix the problem, then you say, okay, now we fixed it, we can then buy the remainder of the business, the remainder of the shares or a proportion of the shares, that sort of thing. So it's really important. We found that learning from by doing effectively is very, very key. And the other time when no money down type deal works really well is when I said earlier, you've been talking, it's about, I was saying, HVAC companies, you've spoken to 10 of them because you've got a bit of a campaign you're working on. What we find is really useful when you do that, you find one business and then suddenly you acquire that, then you suddenly find others and you start bringing them together. And we start then to create a little group of companies, a roll up. And if you thematically then say, I've seen we're getting some traction in construction or electrical mechanical engineering or manufacturing or whatever, these sectors. And we're currently rolling up a number of different sectors like that, where we can identify these businesses that we can put together a proposition that's very compelling, where we can help them solve these problems that are inherently baby boomers or even Generation X type guys who are looking for someone to come in and help them take the business to the next level. They can see this as a mechanism by which they'll be able to realize the value they're seeking. Because we take two companies, modestly, valued companies, bring them together. They might have got an individual 3x multiple of profit, but by bringing these companies together, we get a bigger group and we can start to get 6, 10, 12 times multiple, just by not doing anything within those businesses, just by bringing them together. And there's some natural synergies can take place, obviously, where we might want to take one and fix a bit of the that's like company 4 I was mentioning earlier fixes the problem in company number 10 because it had a solution for company number 10. There are natural organic synergies, but just having them together then creates a stronger balance sheet, gives them the ability to perhaps in a commercial contracting would be able to secure bigger contracts because they can point to a group holding with a stronger balance sheet, and therefore this one contract's not going to with the corporate procurement team would look at the company, the supplier, this company, and say this contract's going to equate to more than 30% of your turnover. Now I think you're a little bit risky, you know the score, So by now you can put, no, we're part now of a multi-million-dollar, group of companies. And you go, oh, great, and it opens up the door. Bonding levels, can start easy and grow a bonding level in construction, so you can tackle bigger, more lucrative projects, and so on and so on. Yeah.
No, interesting. What do you think during that journey? Clearly, you've learned a lot, and as you say, I think the execution of these things is the only really real way to learn. You've got to, I think that that thing of jumping in with both feet. If you don't do it, you're not doing it properly, and you're not doing it fully. So what do you think the biggest mistake was that you've made on that journey?
Oh, I hard to say is one. There's probably loads, but for me, making mistakes is what it should be about, because we only learn from those mistakes. And I know a lot of people say that, but it's an absolute truth. Certainly my experience. Try not to make those mistakes more than once. That's obviously key. I suppose one of the biggest things I would say would be, I've learnt that whenever we do a deal, do any transaction, it could be a joint venture where people are partnering with me, or an acquisition, anything in business, even in life yourself. Only work with people that you mutually like, trust, respect, and admire. That sixth sense, in understanding what your values are, and making sure that I only want to work with people where mutually we like, trust, respect, and admire. Then I think really focusing on understanding the problem. Don't go in with this is what I'm only going to deal with. I'm looking for, you may have in your back of mind, you're looking for particular characteristics of business. That's fine, sure. But not forcing an acquisition down a particular route, a solution, the deal structure down a route that clearly is is not serving the owner, the seller of the business. So what we've learned is always to really present yourself as an entrepreneur. Right. One of the things that people often do when they start the space, if they haven't got a years of M&A experience, not come from a big M&A firm or anything like that, or VC, they think I'm going to have to reinvent myself. And there's a little bit of imposter syndrome comes in, and that holds them back a little bit. They build out a website, they create the new company. But reality is that someone can do as a who is, look up, can't they, on the domain and see it was registered last week. The company, look at Companies House and see it was registered about the same sort of time. The whole credibility gets blown out. So one of the advice I regularly give to people starting here is to be yourself. Look at your own CV on LinkedIn, just tweak it a little bit. And actually, when people ask you, and you put this in your bio, say that I've been blessed to have been very, very successful in my career to date. And then now taking that experience and then applying it to businesses that I'm now acquiring to help them grow, scale. It tells them everything, that you've got experience, which is true. You look at your resume, your background, mine, etc., where we started from. You're not trying to, be someone you're not. And that's about the congruence of it, being congruent with yourself. And it makes you feel a lot more relaxed. You can lean back and just have those conversations when they ask you, well, how many deals have you done? And you say, well, no, this is my first deal. So I'm really keen to make sure it's the right deal. Right now, I don't know it's the right company for me, because I'll next ask you, well, where's your money coming from? Sure. You simply tell them it's coming from a combination of my own net worth and those of my financial backers, because you typically will need to have some financial backing behind you to do them. And but right now you'll say to them, I don't really know if this is a business that I want to acquire, but I'll be able to provide you with a proof of funds, and this is how my acquisition process works. And it makes it you're leveling up, so to speak, and being a lot more professional, having a conversation. But ultimately, what you end up doing, whether it's through a broker or through direct with the seller, you're just having a great conversation about and understanding their needs, their nightmare scenarios. Really understand what the problem is first, then you can test some little strategies, things, would they be interested in a deferred consideration? Are they interested with staying on? If they like the proposal, we understand that your priority here is to go and move out of state here in the US and perhaps go from Colorado to Texas or something like that for family reasons. So we need to make sure you can achieve that quickly. And then you build up what's important to them, and then being able to then come back to them with a solution that gets them to their number. Right. I found that actually, if you demonstrate that knowledge and that empathy, and you maintain that, you bring yourself onto the same side of the table as them, to a certain extent,
Sure.
and particularly around funding. We particularly do our funding for our deals where we can fund up to about $50 billion per transaction now because of our backing that we have with the hedge funds. But it means we never get to that size right now. But reality is that what we're doing when we speak to entrepreneurs, we're looking to solve a problem, demonstrate we're a safe pair of hands for them, and being very ecological. Not seeking to do any harm, being congruent about what we're doing. That's very, very important.
Yeah. And
then as a result of that, we're really able to, come up with the right solution for them. And in fact, we position ourselves as being, we're here to get you to your end number.
Yeah.
We don't really quibble a great deal about their end number. All right, maybe they think the business should be worth 4 million, but in reality, it's only worth 3. We'll find a way to get them to the 4 million as long as they are willing to be flexible on the terms.
Sure.
And it comes back to the point where we're working on with them as being where we like, trust, respect, and admire one another. Now, if you build that relationship, there's this sense of that we are all working together to get this deal over the line. And as a result, one of our funding strategies, we can take, we typically finance, or rather value a business as a multiple of profit plus the cash less working capital, generally speaking. Sometimes we have to throw in AR, accounts receivable, sometimes work in progress goes in. There's different things and different schools, but thoughts about how you should value a business. But reality is, when you're valuing the business, it's subjective. We don't need to, my way of valuing the business might be different to yours. What's important about, can we make it work? Do the numbers add up, and do we feel there's a way to get it there? And if you feel like that, and you know that you can actually raise the capital for it, and you can put together a deal structure that means that you can, maybe they're accepting some deferred consideration, and the finance costs for the acquisition are such that the business can pay for it easily, even if a black swan event happens like COVID, then sure. Why not? Why not do the deal? Why not give them get a deal together where they do get their 4 million ultimately, rather than putting your heels in, dig your heels in, and say, no, that's silly. You're asking way too much for the business. And because no one likes to be told their baby is ugly. So it's, so you have to, be aware of that. You're dealing with people's life's work. And in reality, what you're doing, you're picking up the baton from them and running the last leg of the relay race when you speak to them.
Yeah. Okay. And so just going back to your journey then. So you consolidated these groups, and obviously a huge amount of experience in doing that. How did you exit? What was the kind of the exit?
It was a mixture, really, a mixture of trade exits, MBOs. Where we managed to facilitate the existing management team to buy us out, right. As well as a reverse merger into a listed vehicle.
Right. So okay. So what, an RTO?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's take over.
Yeah. Okay. And so that then gave you the opportunity to hang out in the Alps for a little while and do some skiing.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I moved to Switzerland. Lived in a lovely place called Vegas. It's like it even got palm trees. Would you believe there? It's right, but it's across Lake Lucerne, little microclimate, if you will. But what was really surreal about it, I'd sit on this lovely deck and we'd look across the lake to the Alps, and you see the storms coming in. We had a little ski mountain behind us, so I just walk around the corner, take the cable car up to the ski hill, and a lovely restaurant and spa there. So we'd hang out there for hours or days sometimes, or we get stuck up there having too much food and too much drink, and then realize the cable car had stopped. We had to take the tram, trolley tram down, and then catch it. We didn't have Ubers then. Try and get a taxi to come back round the mountain to get home. But yeah, it was a lovely time in my life. Really, really enjoyed myself.
Yeah. And so then there was an itch you had to scratch in terms of getting started again.
Yeah. So that's right. We decided we were basically, my stepson's father lives in Puerto Rico, so we're constantly commuting from Zurich to San Juan. And it was getting a bit of a pain, to be honest with you. And plus, we have family here in Orlando. I'm married to a Colombian lady, so surrounded by Latinos here, which is lovely, by the way, and lovely food, and lovely environment. Great parties all the time and things like that. But so we decided we'd move here to the US. My wife Sammy, she's American citizen as well, so she very kindly helped me get my visa. So I was on the end of getting a spousal visa, so I'm a resident here in the US now. And I sat down, and when I arrived here, and thought, what am I going to do? What project am I going to do? And I quickly bought a construction company locally, and then flipped it straight away, primarily to see if I still have my mojo, if you will, because it'd been a few years since I'd done a few deals. Luckily I had, and the sort of market was really strong. And at that point decided to set up my private equity firm, Blackhouse, and then also a transformational company, which is the engine effectively that we have our late stage incubator and accelerator in. And whenever we acquire a company, those companies go into our late stage incubator and accelerator to effectively help us ensure that the businesses we acquire are well run, well managed, and grow. And so I'm using my transformational knowledge in that area with the team there to grow the companies and to secure the value. And Blackhouse is being a key acquisition company that's go out and acquire the various companies, and then have a finance arm as well that helps us arrange the finance and provide financing that really addresses a lot of the challenges that people have out there. Things like the PGs being involved. We don't, all of our lending that we arrange now for our deals and other people's deals don't have any personal guarantees associated to them. We typically pay a really good rate, have really good rates on them to be like a 3%, around the 3% rate, 10-year holiday interest only, 3 years of payment holidays, and then just the principal being paid off within the 10 years. When we have deals like that, and we do an LBO as an example, it's that runway you create by not having any of the financial costs associated to the acquisition for 3 years, and then after the 3 years, in year 4, you're only then typically paying the interest off on a monthly basis. It's fantastic. We're able to now go in and acquire businesses 100% at close, and provide the cash and create over leverage a little bit, you might argue, on it, but we have that buffer built in. So that over leverage gives an option for us to perhaps bring in a lot more working capital, or in fact create capital events for ourselves.
Yeah,
it's very important. So that's one of the things I learned kind of when we were talking about the distressed acquisitions. We built out a strategy called a work in buyout strategy, where sometimes it was the right type of deal. We can charge fees, secure our exclusivity on a deal before we buy the company even, and that creates a revenue stream through a deal. It's not always relevant. You can't do that in every case, and some people make that mistake, and they try and use this working buyout strategy to on every deal, and it clearly falls flat on a number of situations. And then obviously when we acquire a business, we typically create a capital event at that point. And then obviously throughout the operation of the business and growing, scaling it, that's capital events happen there as well. Of course, dividends being paid, and ultimately the real wealth generating activities through creating that constructive exit in the future.
Yeah. I mean, because it's easy to get into these situations, but sometimes difficult to get out if you haven't got that kind of foresight and experience of doing that. So if somebody's interested in this space, what advice would you give them to getting started?
I would. A lot of people struggle over the sourcing side to start with. So I think the first thing would be, as I mentioned earlier, be congruent. Don't overthink that I've got to be this very experienced M&A guy. Be yourself. That's the first thing. That will bring your own credibility as yourself. Be very congruent in that respect. Then I think around your sourcing, a lot of people will get frustrated as hell with business brokers, and it's quite somewhat true. And any business brokers on the call, please don't bash me over this. But the reality is that as there are in acquirers in this space, there's good players and bad players. There's experienced people and less experienced people. And that's the same in the brokerage world. And often people, when they're in this environment, they're banging heads, and the key thing is, as I said earlier, only work with people you mutually like, trust, respect, and admire. So in our case, we're happy to work with brokers as an example, because what we've realized is actually when we're sourcing, I can go out and do online campaigns, letter writing, etc., just like you might do with on property, as an example. Lots of campaign, going out, letter writing campaigns, social media, but it's a bit of a shotgun approach as well. Long tail activity, isn't it? You never really know if that letter is going to land on the desk of the business owner when they're in the mindset to actually say, yeah, I'm fed up with this business, or I really want to sell, etc. It's a lottery. Yeah. However, if you want to really get volume and get the experience going, why don't you go directly to where we know people are selling, where they've already decided to sell? And that's through the listed network, the broker networks, etc. Sure. So going to places like Biz Buy Sell or direct to the broker sites. But when you do that, just as you said earlier, you're going to spend a lot of time speaking to the business owner, building up their empathy, understanding their problem, coming up with a solution. Why wouldn't you do that with the broker? Why wouldn't you? Because they're vested into making sure this deal goes through. Because reality is that through their own professional bodies statistics, only about 1 in 10 of the clients they have on their books as a broker do they actually succeed in selling their business. That's a 90% failure rate. Terrible, really. A lot of the people you'll speak to will say, no, we're not like that, we're a lot better, and I believe them. They are. Yeah. But as I say, we have to, statistics are there that we can refer to. However, you think about it, when you speak to a broker, they probably had that listing quite often, maybe for quite a few months, maybe a couple of years even, and they've been trying to sell the business. And that's really a key thing, to understand how long the business has been on the market. And of course, when you come and speak to the broker, you're now suddenly the gold standard. This deal that you're talking to them about, it's now the gold standard. They want, because it's the one that's going to put food on their table. Sure. So if you can actually think about their problem, they're dealing all the time with business owners that may be unrealistic, problematic. They're having to try and manage their expectations. They're saying they want 4 million when the business is worth 3, or 10 and only worth 4, or something like that. And some really crazy sometimes expectations. And so they've got a tough job. So when we talk to business brokers, we frankly interview them to start with. We talk to them about the deal, but we ask them 3 key questions. How long have you been a broker? How many deals have you done in the last 24 months? Yeah. And can you give me an example of 2 or 3 really creative deal structures you were involved with? And if they're coming back with saying, oh, a couple of years, not a lot of experience, or I've done maybe 1 or 2 deals, yeah, not a lot of experience there. And if they come up with some very benign, oh yes, it was a asset transaction with a deferred consideration, you go, well, that's just bog standard, stuff. But what it really does is puts you on a higher level, so for them to step up to you on a professional basis and a conversation. It makes them sit back and listen to you. In the absence of that, when you don't do that, they will jerk your chain, so to speak, bit of a marionette, trying to, so this is how it's going to work, and give us your
proof of funding and all that kind of
funds,
stuff,
your net worth statement. Yeah. You don't have to do any of that. They want that because they're always dealing with smaller individual guys. You can explain to them, as I said earlier, our funds come a combination of my own net worth and those of my financial backers. Every deal is dealt with and reviewed on the merits on its own. I don't even know I want to buy this business right now, but once we do, and we get the term sheet into you, I'll then follow up with a proof of funds for you. Yeah, that's how we operate. If you don't like it, we can move on.
Yeah, next. Yeah.
And don't worry. So, and that's the other thing. Don't. The other bit of advice would be, don't get deal heat. I've had terrible deal heat at times. I know I told you I had my first deal done. This HVAC company in the UK. Jeremy Harbour helped me acquire the company. Really great experience. And then we had another company go and see that particular day, and didn't go through ultimately. But I spent over a year chasing this deal down. It's an IT company. I got my consulting mind hat on, and I was modeling out all the things we would do, how we'd make work. These guys, how we turn this company around. They decided, oh, we'll try it ourselves. They failed miserably, and actually 2 years later, the business, did collapse, or less than that actually, did go into insolvency and was wound up. So deal heat, I wasted a lot of time on that. So knowing that there will be plenty of other deals to go along, come along to you. So don't worry about if the deal doesn't quite work, or they're asking you feel like you're having to jump through loads of hoops and loops. There has to come a point where you say, sorry, this is how we operate, because they will, every time. The danger is that if you haven't built up that empathy and understand that relationship, you will probably have started by positioning the deal somewhat in their favor, because that's what you want to do. You're never really going to do anything to harm yourself knowingly. But if it means the difference between getting the deal and not, perhaps by adjusting the multiple up a little bit, including a little bit more of the assets in the company, because, I won't necessarily go into all the sort of valuation models that one might consider now, but you can actually make something looks on paper really good. But do you know what they'll do? Often as not, they'll move the goalposts over a little bit further. So you keep on having to sort of realign the goalposts again. But you have to stop that at some point. You have to have the confidence to be able to say, sorry, this is as far as I can go on this deal, and be happy and confident to move on. Yeah. Don't allow yourself to get deal heat, because the opportunity cost is way too great.
Yeah. No, interesting. I in my experience of negotiating with people and on lots of transactions, I think that the best deals are where both parties walk away with a bit of pain, but both feel like it's the right deal to have done. And that's exactly. Kind of the way I always try and
and you feel, don't you, Matt, this feeling like the deals are flowing to you. It's very hard. It's very hard to sort of put that quantifiably, but it's a gut feeling. It's like anything. If everybody's in life, there'll be things that just experiences come to you, and you haven't had to work that hard. Maybe I'm just lazy. maybe I just like an easier life. But it's somewhat true. That's why we only work with people we like, trust, respect, and admire, mutually speaking. Yeah. Because if you don't, it's just hard work. Yeah. And there is work here. So if anybody tells you that you can do all of this sitting on the beach, and some of them people out there marketing and tell you that's true, it's absolute bullshit. Eventually, maybe you might build a team around you that you can have a lot more flexibility. And I'm lucky that I do have that. I'm traveling with COVID. Even with COVID, we're traveling around the world and having fun and enjoying life at the same time, and everything keeps moving. But when you're starting off, you're going to somewhat provide or have some obligations you create with a seller when you're acquiring a company. To the employees, you can easily lose a massive amount of value in the company if you haven't thought about the employee value proposition when you acquire the company. If you focused on just the owner, the exiting owner, and forgot about all of the staff, you'll find very quickly they react to that. They're nervous. They're not everybody takes change well, as I think we know. They're worried about their job security, and they go, well, they'll jump, and then you suddenly realize the fundamental the assumptions you made about the business aren't there. The revenues are going. Your best sales guys left. Your general manager, the key guy who's stepping up, that's going to bridge that gap whilst the owner transitions out, has decided to move on. He doesn't like it. And maybe there's resentment. He says, well, I'm leaving because John, the owner, has just made a massive amount of money and just off he went and left us here.
Left me doing all the hard work, the heavy lifting.
And it's an interesting mindset often with employees like that, where they don't like change, and they also don't recognise the fact that business owners, entrepreneurs, it's one of the toughest things. It can have massive highs and massive lows. The opportunity cost is often really high for an entrepreneur. And that's another about these motivations we talked about. They often find that they've spent all of these years building a great business, and it's been a roller coaster of a ride. But there's been loads of times where the employees got paid, and they didn't. And their home, everything's on the line. They've got these personal guarantees up to their eyeballs and higher.
Oh yeah. No, that's never appreciated by them. But and more than that, that responsibility of making sure that they get paid every week. If you have employees, it can give you sleepless nights, can't it? It's it's a stress thing. I'm mindful of time, because I know you've got a hard stop.
I'm okay for a couple more minutes.
Sure. So on a personal basis, you've got a huge amount going on. You're working on lots of transactions at any time. How do you find your kind of moment of zen? And I can see the Buddha behind you, so that's kind of maybe
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's true to say, the way I've put together our operating model here is that I'm sometimes surplus to needs here, because I've got a very scalable model. So I basically can drop myself in at any different particular point. I've learned that to understand what my true values are, having fun, adventure, and discovery. And so whenever I feel that I'm not having a bit of fun, or things are getting a bit harder, I kind of step back a little bit and disassociate from what's going on and say, what's going on here? How do I make more fun? It may be that I've just not been spending enough time with the family. And this happens. You end up focusing on your career or on life in certain things, the businesses as an entrepreneur. And if you're not careful, you don't have that work-life balance. So I'm always focused on that, to making sure that I can have that freedom and flexibility to go and spend time, whenever he wants, and know that the plates, as I mentioned, are still spinning. So for rest time for me, is family time. To be honest with you, going out, traveling. We love traveling. Going out, doing some crazy sports and things like that. Love parachuting, love adventurous sports. Equally, just love, obviously we love skiing, but also love just laying on the beach and just enjoying, but visiting things and spending time together. And I think it's important. Yes, you can get you can build up all the toys and fun things like that, but ultimately it's about, for me, it's about having the capital to be able to have the lifestyle to be able to afford to travel and afford the things that you want to be able to do in life, but at the same time, just enjoying when you have to roll your sleeves up, enjoying that I don't have now, I get up in the morning having conversations like this with entrepreneurs throughout the day, and then find when I've now got it, after all these conversations, I've now got to do my work. I have to get this job, all the actions done. So but that's fine. I enjoy it. If I need to work on a Saturday or a Sunday, I do. But then I know if I want to take off Monday through to Thursday next week, I can do. Go and travel. That's the beauty of it. And it's, if anything, it's about creating, to be able to create wealth, for myself and my family is one thing, but also just doing it, helping other people, like entrepreneurs, being able to help them exit, because it comes back to the cathartically having enjoying what you do. Experiencing life well, and actually knowing that you're paying forward in a way, and I don't want to over sugar this, but it's true. If you can either tackle this whole area with very combatively, and there's some people out there deal with it as being very combative side, but we'll screw the guy over to get as much the best deal we probably can, and the hell with them. We don't do that, absolutely not, because it's all about for us, making sure that we're solving the problem, getting the entrepreneur to their end number, creating that freedom and flexibility they're seeking, and arguably giving them the biggest capital event they've ever experienced, and probably is also their last shot sometimes at doing this. And they need to make this work in order for them to retire. And of course, the beauty of it is we're inheriting that legacy, and we're carrying that baton and that flame and moving on with it, without all of those startup type issues. And as entrepreneurs, we love the golden penny, don't we, syndrome, where we love chasing the things. I fight with that every day to try and focus on things that we know which are tried and tested, rather than actually constantly, because we have as entrepreneurs, so many great ideas. But reality is it's very costly, very risky, starting those. So this late mature businesses that one can acquire you're doing so in a way that solves a problem for those entrepreneurs, creating the wealth generation they're seeking, as well as solving that emotional challenge they need, and at the same time creating really great economic outcome for yourself and your partners on the deal.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on this briefly earlier, and we probably don't have time to go into it now, but there's a huge potential wave of these types of opportunities with the kind of baby boomer generation who are all looking to retire. And I think COVID may have accelerated that in some instances. We've had lots of capital put into companies, and some of them won't be able to afford those repayments. So I think certainly in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in the US as well, I think there's potentially lots of opportunities out there, which is part of the reason that I reached out, because I think I'm always keen to learn about acquisition strategies and how these things can be put together.
Absolutely. Well, invite me back, mate. we can have a part 2, and we can dive into a few more of those other things.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate your time. And where can viewers and listeners find you if they want to reach out?
They can drop me a line at craig.boddington@blackhousepe.com.
Okay, perfect. And your blackhousepe.com website, I'm assuming also.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay. Please like our podcast and subscribe today.